Okay, the next part we're going to talk about is the edges. So when you're making these things, if you're doing something that's for survival or just to try something new and fit and finish are not as concerned, this is something that isn't necessarily important, but it's something that sort of makes your work look that much more professional. We're going to talk about edging the leather briefly. And this involves two steps, beveling and burnishing. Okay, why you would want to do this is it will help protect the leather, the edge of the leather, so it doesn't start to fray. And so for outdoor stuff, it would be important. But again, if you just need a bag quick, then this may not be something you need to do. There are, of course, some other reasons, but one of the main reasons is it just looks nicer. Okay, it has a more finished look to it. So that's what we're going to talk about now. And chief among that is this tool called a beveler. Okay, and it's just basically a little sort of notched blade. There's different sizes for that little slot in there, and they go by numbers. They may vary, so it's usually 0 being the smallest and 6 or so being bigger. Anything bigger than that, the leather's probably pretty thick, and you can actually use a blade at an angle to cut that. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate that briefly. Okay, so we're going to bevel some leather now. All right, so what we're going to do is you basically take the beveler and you place it along the edge. It'll sort of fit in that on the edge like a groove, and then you're just going to push it forward. So I can get a better view. There you go. Okay. So you don't actually need to do it twice. I'm just sort of showing you. Okay. Now, depending on the thickness of the leather and the size of your beveler, you will get more or less material. This is pretty thin leather, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to basically give you a somewhat smoother edge. It's really hard to see, but you can see the material that's left over, okay? So I've got a sharp edge here that's not beveled, and you may think that looks better, and it does right now. And then this is the other edge. Okay, it's hard to see on this camera, but it's actually smoothed over like a router bit where you round over the top. So we're going to continue doing the rest of this. When it comes to corners, you have to be a little bit more gentle, okay, because a lot of times the material, it may gouge or dig in deeply. It's better to go lightly with the pressure. And sometimes I'll actually go in short bits like that and then that, sort of the way we cut it. Okay. It all depends on your skill. And this is another place where having a very sharp tool is important. Now remember, some areas don't need to be beveled, okay, because they're not going to be seen, they're internal. And again, sometimes the leather is really almost too thin to bevel, but it does provide a nice look, a good finish look. And that's one of the things that's going to separate you from somebody who's less experienced, is how you finish up your work. Okay, there's lots of little tricks and trade things that you can do that can distinguish yourself beyond the actual construction and trade craft that goes with making whatever product you're making. Those little details can make a big difference. Edge, if the two seams are going to meet, because you don't necessarily need to remove that much thickness on the other side, so this will make a good connection. If it's like a flap, then you might want to do both sides so that it creates a nice rounded thing. So for those of you who are into woodworking and stuff, think about it like a router bit and you're doing a round over, okay? So again, it's still going to be fuzzy until we do this next step. And the next step is we're going to take and use a burnisher, which is a tool that smooths the fibers down so that you can, that creates a smoother surface. And the importance of doing this is, A, it protects the fibers, it protects them from getting frayed. If you've ever seen the edge of a leather belt or something and it gets all fuzzy, that's part of that. And it also allows the dye to kind of go on very nicely as well, which is just another sort of additional step. And of course, thirdly, it just really looks a lot nicer. So that's what I'm going to show you next, which is how to burnish these edges. Okay. So when it comes to burnishing, there are a lot of different tools out there. You'll see things that look kind of like this. All right. And this is a type of burnisher. It's made out of wood. And then you'll also see these little guys. Okay, there's a groove, and that groove is what your leather slides into. And it's essentially helps to form that edge. So whatever's going on in there is what's going to translate to the edge. Think of this like a router bit. Okay, and same thing here. These are just different thicknesses. So for really thick leather, I'm going to be using this guy. And then as we go down into thinner and thinner and thinner. Now, part of this is you could, to an extent, and you're just basically going to be going back and forth like this. You could do that and it will work a little bit, but really, ideally, you want to use something that helps lubricate these fibers. Okay, it's a combination of moisture and friction that we're going to be employing to cause these fibers to sort of stay down. Okay. All right, so now in this phase, let's push this back more. Okay, so in this phase of the operation, we're going to be concentrating on using one of the simpler materials, water. Now, there's also something called gum traganthe that some people will apply, but that's something you're going to want to do before you dye or after you dye the material, because it will sort of resist and not really allow the dye. So what I'm doing is I'm taking just a little wool dauber. You can use any means you need to apply some water. So now the edge is kind of damp. Okay, and we can still see it's sort of fuzzy. And then I literally am just going to take this and rub it back and forth. Okay. Now, with something that's thinner and floppy like this, you're going to want to support it as much as you can. Sometimes I'll use like the edge of the table and go back and forth like this, so that the edge of the table prevents the leather from sort of crumpling and crinkling and sort of folding over on itself, especially if it's something that is really smooth. And then there we go. Okay, I don't know if you can really see that. Okay, but it is a lot smoother now. All right, compared to this, which is not. Okay, and again, I'll try to maybe take some pictures so that you can see the detailing. And this is nice and smooth now, so it's got a nice finished appearance. And you'll see it's a little pushed over on the back. Now, this is the top pocket of the flap, so I'm going to want to make sure that I get both sides of this, so that when you're reaching your hand in there, that creates a nice comfortable and a nice finished look.